Hello everyone, in this video we are going to look at scatter plots. So what is a scatter plot? A scatter plot is a graph that shows the relationship between two data sets. The two data sets are graphed as ordered pairs in a coordinate plane. And the good thing about scatter plots is it can show us trends in the data, right? As one thing increases, does the other piece of data increase as well? Does it decrease, or maybe there's no relation there? So here's an example of a scatter plot, and we're going to answer these three questions based on the scatter plot that we see. So notice on our scatter plot is a coordinate plane. We can look at a couple things. Our x-axis represents weekly homework hours. So as we increase on the x-axis, that means a student is spending more time on homework throughout the week. And the y-axis says grade point average. So as we go up on the y-axis, we are increasing our GPA, right? So we see the points here. We can see that the points are kind of moving in this upwards, uphill direction, a positive direction here, okay? So let's look at our three questions because we can interpret some things based on the coordinates of these points. Question A says, what is the GPA of a student who spends 6 hours a week on homework? So we know 6 hours a week on homework would be right here because that's between 4 and 8. And so now we just want to go up to this point. And what is the y value of that point? It is 2. So that means the GPA of this student would be a 2.0. B says, how many hours a week does the student who has a 2.75 GPA spend on homework? So now they've given us the GPA. So 2.75 would be this point right here. And so now we can look, the corresponding x value is 12. So how many hours? 12 hours a week. Okay. And lastly, what tends to happen to the GPA as the number of hours spent on homework increases? So kind of what we talked about at the beginning, what's the pattern, right? As x increases, what happens to y? And we would say it also increases. So what tends to happen to the GPA? We would say the GPA tends to increase. Okay, the GPA increases as the homework increases. Okay. Another thing we can benefit from with scatter plots is what's called correlation. So we can have three types of correlation. A correlation is just a relationship between the data sets. And we're going to start here on the left side of our screen. Notice these points are going uphill from left to right, kind of like the example we just looked at. So in this case, we have as x increases, y also increases. We would call this a positive correlation. Now on the second one, our trend is kind of going downhill from left to right. So as x increases, y decreases. We would call this a negative correlation. And if we look at the last one, there's really no pattern that we can see there. And so we would just say there is no correlation between those points. Okay, so that's what correlation is, positive, negative, or no correlation. And lastly, we're going to make a scatter plot. So it says make a scatter plot of the data and tell whether the data show a positive, negative, or no correlation. So we look at our x-axis, our x values, and it says that the label of our x-axis should be age of the car. So age of car. And the values we have are between 1 and 8. Okay, so we can just label 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. And our value of the car is thousands of dollars, and that's what we could label our y-axis in. Okay, so value in thousands. And we have from 23,000 all the way down to 6,000. So we can label, let's go by maybe by twos, right? So let's say 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, and this one would be 24. Okay, so that represents, like when it says 2, that's 2,000, okay? So now we're going to plot these points. This would be 1, 23, right? So 1, 23, 2, 20, 3, 18, 4, 17, 5, 14, 6, 11, 7, 7, and 8, 6. Okay? All right, so now we can say, okay, what tends to happen as the age of the car increases? Well, we can see that our points are going downhill So we would say this would be a negative correlation, right? Which in the real world makes sense, right? When you buy a car, it's probably worth as much as it's ever going to be worth right once you buy the car. As soon as you drive it off the lot, it is losing value, right? So this makes sense, okay? So that's a little bit about scatter plots.